happening as of right now. So once again, thank you all for coming. We really appreciate it. This is our very first event on Latinos in Law, so we are really grateful for you to take the time out of your very busy schedules, especially given that we are 2 weeks away from finals, to come to our first ever event. So before we get into the actual content of the actual event itself, like Diana said, we want to go ahead and introduce our board members so that you have a good understanding as to who's going to be administering this event. So with that, I'll go ahead and introduce myself. So as you can see by my name on my icon, my name is Eric Esparza. I am the president and founder of Latinos in Law. I am a junior transfer student, my bad. So shout out to all of our transfer students as well. I am majoring in legal studies, and I'm trying to hopefully get a minor in history. It all depends on how the fall 2021 semester looks like. And with that, I'll go ahead and pass it over to Tatiana.
Hello, everybody. I'm Tatiana. I'm a marketing officer. I'm a senior, and I'm a legal major. So I'm really excited that we have our great panelists here. Pass that off to Anthony.
Hi, everyone. I'm Anthony. I use he, they pronouns. I am a fourth year graduating this semester studying gender and women's studies and political economy. And I really want to go into civil rights law or education law. And yeah, super excited to have all of you here. And I'll pass it off to Alex. External affairs. I don't know if I mentioned that.
Hi, everyone. My name is Alexandra Gonzalez Edgar, but I go by Alex. I also use the she, her pronoun, and I'm the secretary for the Latinos in Law group. I'm a transfer student as well, and I'm studying legal studies with a minor in public policy. And I also hope to go into civil rights, activism, social movements. I love it all, so hopefully I'll find more of a niche once I get maybe more into the law. And we also have, oh yeah, I guess that's everyone for us.
That's everyone for our board. So thank you all for our board members for introducing yourselves. So before we get into the introductions of our three amazing panelists that we have here in the audience today, we want to give a quick overview of what Latinos in Law is, simply because we are a brand new organization, and this is our first ever public event for people to really understand who we are as an organization. So Latinos in Law, as I've just stated, is a brand new organization here at the University of California, Berkeley. We are a brand new organization, and the idea of this org was actually formulated in November of this past year, 2020. This is actually our first ever semester in which we have been operating. But as you may can already tell, this is our first ever event. And the reason why this is our only event this semester is that this semester was much more allocated for us to create the foundation and structure of this organization. We wanted to make sure that we understood what Latinos in Law meant to each and every one of us in the community we were trying to represent. We wanted to make sure that we could establish a mission statement, our goals and values. And we wanted to make sure that we had a differentiating factor that would differentiate us from other pre-law and Latinx affiliated organizations here at UC Berkeley as well. Thankfully, we're actually to finalize and create our mission statement from Latinos in Law. And our mission statement reads that Latinos in Law seeks to embrace and support the Latino, Latina, and Latinx population here at UC Berkeley interested in law and the legal field. And we assist them through networking, internships, informative events, workshops, scholarships, and panels like the one here today. We also aim to help not just the Latino, Latina, and Latinx population here at UC Berkeley, but also the Latino, Latina, and Latinx youth who are going to be the next generation coming Berkeley and who have a particular interest in getting a career in the law and legal field. Now, we also recognize and celebrate our own individuals' identities, our cultures, traditions, dialects, religions, and heritages through festive events. And of course, those events will be taking place in the fall 2021 semester. So please do keep a lookout for that. Now, the reason why I wanted to stick the mission statement is that if this mission statement from Latinos in Law very much resonates with each and every one of you, and if you support our mission statement, if you support what our organization is about, well, as you may have already seen on our Instagram page, our flyer has already been distributed, noting that our board applications to become a board member from Latinos in Law for the fall 2021 to spring 2022 semester are now open. Now, the applications are due this Friday at 11:59 p.m., but the great thing is that our applications are right to the point and easy to manage. They should take roughly around 10 minutes or less to submit. So please go ahead and make sure you keep a lookout on that. The application is provided on our flyers, and the application for the link itself is actually in the chat. If you want, you can go ahead and click on the link in the chat, have it open on an extra tab, stay here for the remainder of the event. Once this event has concluded, you can go back, fill it out tonight, if you will, and you'll be ready to go, as it should take less than 10 minutes. And the reason why I say this is that because, unfortunately, some of our board members who were able to introduce themselves today are seniors. And as you may know, we're coming to the end and our seniors are going to be graduating. So they're going to be leaving us. So we need new board members to join and help us in executing our mission statement and our goals for this organization. And as I probably have already said, we have a lot in store for this upcoming semester and a full academic year, especially since we are looking to have in-person operations in the fall 2021 semester. We have a lot more events, we have partnerships, we have many resources, internships, all available for you, but none of this can't be made possible without your support. So please do consider applying to become a board member. Your possibilities of becoming a board member are very high, as we are allowing 1 to 2 individuals to fill up each respective position. If you have any questions regarding this board member application, please send us a direct message on our Instagram page or send us an email at latinosinlaw.cal@gmail.com. We'll be sure to get back to you as soon as we can, and especially before the deadline, which is this Friday. Now, with that, I want to give a brief overview of how this event is going to be administered before we allow our panelists to introduce ourselves. So as you probably saw on our flyer, we have 2 different Q&A sessions. So the first Q&A session is actually going to be taking in a couple of minutes, where Diana, who has just introduced herself, and I will be giving and asking questions from a Google document to our panelists. Our panelists are going to have the opportunity to answer these questions that we have already created for them between the moment I ask the first question up until 8 p.m. At 8 p.m., we will actually be transitioning to our second round of what we will also refer as a Q&A session, where you, the audience, will be able to have your questions that you create on your own be asked to one of our panelists. Now, the way in which we're going to do that is that the moment I ask our first question from the Google document that we have ready to go, if you already have your question formulated, you can go ahead and type it in the chat and send it as a private message to Anthony Ayala, who is, again, also introduced himself, who is one of our board members. So don't worry about not having a question at the moment. At any time you have created your question, again, type it in the chat and send it as a private message to Anthony. And the way in which you would send that as a private chat, just type it in the chat, and right above it, you should see a blue box that reads everyone. You can go ahead and click on that blue box, scroll down and click on Anthony's name and send it as a private message. We will do our very best to ask your respective questions to our panelists during the second round of the Q&A session, which will take place after 8 p.m. But we do apologize if we're not able to get that in case we do get a lot of questions submitted. But with that, I'm going to go ahead and allow our amazing panelists to introduce themselves. You may have seen our faces already on our flyers, but it's better for you to hear from them, hear the voices, and learn more about them before we get into our 2 Q&A sessions. So for our panelists, regarding your introductions, you're going to state your names, your pronouns as an option, where you are from, and the type of law you practice or the type of law you're interested in. Don't worry about having forgotten what to cover in your introductions. We're actually going to copy and paste what you need to cover in introductions and post it in the chat. So I'll be calling on you one at a time. Again, just state your name, your pronouns, where you're from, and the type of law you practice or the type of law you are interested in. So first of all, I'm going to go and let Emmanuel introduce himself. So Emmanuel, whenever you're ready, go ahead and unmute yourself and give us your introduction.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Emmanuel Briesa. I am a senior at Dartmouth studying government and English, and I will be an incoming student at Harvard Law. I am from Las Vegas, interested in studying education law.
Perfect. Thank you very much for that. Next up, we have Ezekiel. Ezekiel, same protocol. Whenever you're ready, go ahead and click on that microphone icon, unmute yourself, and give us your introduction.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ezekiel Gorosino. I am a 2L student at UC Hastings in San Francisco. I am original from Mexico, but more than half of my life has been here in the US. And I am interested, or I am trying to pursue a concentration in tax law. I would like to work on tax issues or trust and estates.
Perfect. Thank you very much for that. And last but certainly not least, we have Cecilia. Cecilia, same thing. Go ahead and unmute yourself and give us your introduction.
Alrighty. Hi, everyone. Good evening. My name is Cecilia Fernandez. I am a deputy public defender in Santa Clara County. I practice criminal defense. It's specific to indigent defense. So I represent folks that don't have the money to hire a private attorney. I am from Salinas, California. I went to law school at Golden Gate in San Francisco. I graduated in 2018. I've been practicing law for about 2 years. It's been 2 years as of last month.
Perfect. Thank you all for those amazing introductions. And as you probably have already gotten from their introductions, that our panelists kind of cover what I like to refer as the 3 phases of the law school process. We have an individual who has just recently been admitted to law school, so they have a fresh perspective on the application process itself. We have another individual who is in law school at this very moment, so they understand what is going on currently, especially with this new virtual online world. And we have another individual, one of our panelists, who has already graduated from law school and is working as a public defender. So shout out to that, is working as a public defender. So think about this event as being sort of a 3-in-1. So definitely saves us a lot of time. We're able to get a lot of different perspectives on this entire process. So now we're going to be getting into the first part of the Q&A session, where Diana and I are going to be asking the questions from a Google document from questions that we have already formulated and shared with our panelists in advance. And we're just going to be going one at a time. But once again, the moment I start reading the first question, if you already have another question that you want asked to one of our panelists during the second part of the Q&A session that will happen after 8 p.m., go ahead and type it in the chat and send it again as a private message to Anthony Ayala, and we'll be sure to cover that in the second part after 8 p.m. So without further ado, we can go ahead and ask our very first question. And our first question for our panelists is, what do you wish you had known before starting law school? And whoever wants to go first, go ahead and click on the microphone icon, unmute yourself, and give us your response.
All righty, well, I can go first. Law school for me has been, I started in 2015, I graduated in 2018. I've been out for a little bit, but I will say that one of the things I wish I would have known is that the LSAT wasn't going to give me a golden map as to how to navigate law school, that everything was still going to be very difficult, that I should have shown myself a little more grace when things are very difficult. I was very quick to kind of just get down and think that I had to study harder and spend 15 hours in the library. And with experience, I slowly started realizing that I needed to take care of myself, of my body, working out, reach out more to professors and work harder, work smarter and not harder. But it was certainly a very tough lesson to learn. And I feel like you can't really embrace that until you're there in the struggle. And I was the person that read every book about how to survive law school. But I think one of the things I wish I would have known is that not only is it going to be hard, but it's doable, that I belong there and that I was going to make it, and that I shouldn't have been thinking about, am I ever going to pass the bar exam my first semester in law school? That I needed to just take the road very slowly, just take a breather, and kind of learn as I went.
I echo what Cecilia said. I think that I had been told, and that law school was difficult, that it's a lot of work. And I thought I had an idea because I also had transferred to Berkeley, and I knew like the kind of rigorous, requirements that the school has, and all the different classes you have to do, carry the units, all the readings and the like. But that was nowhere near what being in law school is like. You have to think in a very different way. And I think that's what the very first semester, it feels like it's a lot, but it's because it's all new. It's completely new. You have to, there's a lot of readings, and, like Cecilia said, it was like, you have to learn how to work smart, not hard. Yes, you can spend the entire time in the library doing all the readings, but you also have to take care of yourself. And I think that one of the important things that I have learned is that you can't just wait to have free time to do something that grounds you. You have to make time for that. Otherwise, you will get sick. And like I said, like if you don't make time to take care of yourself, your body will find that time for you, and it's never going to be the best time. So the amount of work, it's definitely a lot, but it's once you actually get a hang of it, once you actually figure out like what works for you, it becomes a lot easier. Well, I mean, yeah, but by then there's a lot extra work that gets piled on you on your second year. So, but yeah, it's just a lot of work, and you actually have to take care of yourself, take care of your body mentally and physically.
Okay, so thank you for that. Those were all really super helpful answers, and give a little more insight into law school and like what we should expect. For the next question, and I guess this caters a lot to a lot of undergrads, people who are interested in law school and are still kind of deciding if law school is for them. How do law school classes differ from traditional undergraduate classes?
I can start with that. I think that the biggest difference is that in law school, the teaching is done more in a conversational manner rather than just the professor being in front and telling you this is what it is. So you are cold called basically. So Cecilia's probably gonna have flashbacks about that. The professor will just show up, in front of the room, and we'll start talking about a case, and then we'll say like, okay, Ms. Roque, what happened in blah 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 versus blah blah blah. So you will have to say like, oh, okay, so in this case, this is what happened. But this person got into an accident, or this happened, somebody was responsible, and ended up the lawsuit. And then the professor will be like, okay, and so why did the court state this? Why did the judge decided to go with this? Why is this fact more important than this other fact? And you're just basically providing the answers. So that is how the class is structured. And the very first part, the very first time that you will get cold called, it's going to be very, very nerve-wracking, but it doesn't matter. Like, no one is going to remember if you messed up or not. You will mess up when you get cold called. Like, that's going to happen. But everyone is everyone is just thinking about like, oh my God, I don't want to mess up, that they never pay attention when somebody else actually messes up. So, the way that teaching happens is it's more of like the professor guides you to find the right answer rather than telling you this is where the answer is. And that's how you actually get to basically learn how to read cases, learn more about like what the actual law is. You'll learn about like what the holding is and what the black letter law is, and that is just, it's more of a like back and forth kind of teaching.
I will just add is that in undergrad, we're sometimes forced to take classes to fulfill requirements, right? So I didn't want to study anthropology, but I had to take it to graduate. And it was difficult for me, and it was hard for me to understand it. And there's so many classes that I could point out that were the same. So my level of interest wasn't completely there. Science was difficult for me. I didn't understand it. Math was hard. But when you're in law school, you discover like this whole new world. And when you're in class, it's actually exciting. Like, there are topics that I never knew what tort law was. And I was all of a sudden reading these cases that were just infamous. And I was learning things in property law that I just thought, shouldn't like normal human beings be taught this just to go about life? So it's very interesting because you start learning how things are interconnected and why the law is the law in specific scenarios. And all of a sudden your whole life kind of starts making sense in just so many respects, because you start connecting things about your life, cases that you're reading in class. So all of a sudden you are in a space where you're paying a lot of money to be in, and you're learning on topics that are discovering a whole new world, and it's related to law, and everybody wants to be there. You're no longer in a space where some people feel like it's fun to just not go to class. It's one of those things where it's like, I paid $200,000. I'm going to be in this classroom and I'm going to engage in these discussions. So the level of just like intellect and interest, I think just skyrocket, because you're all of a sudden in a space where you want to be, you want to understand, and like you want to master. But I echo everything else Ezequiel said. Those are just things that kind of come to my mind.
Do any of the other panelists have anything else to add regarding that question? Okay, well, with that, we can go ahead and move on to a third question that we have ready for you. So our third question is a really interesting question, and it's, how do you differentiate the personal statement from the diversity statement on the law school application?
So I recently wrote my application for law school, so I can sort of touch on that. I think I approached my law school, my personal statement, more so embodying like who I am as a person and my interests and my background, and just all encompassing sort of that. And I sort of sprinkled in what sort of law I wanted to practice and why. Whereas my diversity statement, so I think a big caveat for at least Harvard law diversity, and I think it's similar for other law schools, is that diversity is a very broad definition. So like even if you're like a wealthy white man from like the middle of Kentucky, you can still be considered diverse because you're from the middle of Kentucky. So so I think I touched my diversity statement was more so touching on other aspects of myself and interests that I didn't necessarily talk about in my personal statement. And I guess another thing too is that I think a lot of people who are like Latino, Latina, Latinx, or like even first generation or low income college students, I think those things are like important to mention, but more importantly is to mention how that has shaped your perspective and what that means for you, and how that has informed your undergraduate experience as well as like your professional experience. So I approached my diversity statement as like, okay, what wasn't I able to say in my personal statement? And then how do these other factors, other components of me, like what did it all mean? Because I read a lot of law school applications, and I think people have a tendency to sort of just kind of like word vomit and like assume that being a low income college student means certain things when it means very different things for very different people. So I think when I spoke on that topic, I just sort of painted a picture as to what that meant for me and what that meant for my life. So I think always coming back to the so what, I think was really beneficial.
I think the only thing I would add, it's obviously been a long time for me, it feels like, but I remember that in my diversity statement, I talked a lot about my unique experience of being the daughter of migrant farm workers that would have to move every 9 months. So we would spend 9 months in California and the rest of the months were in Yuma, Arizona. And so one of my unique experiences was kind of, I moved schools since I was in elementary and all the way till high school. If I was asked how many schools I went to, I probably couldn't count them. I don't have like childhood friends. Like I was always kind of being uprooted and moving back and forth. And we never had a set place in Yuma, Arizona. I was like random, like low income apartments. And I connected kind of like what Emmanuel said, I connected those experiences to just being resilient. Like I was a new kid in school, but I just knew I had to be outgoing. I had to be friendly. I needed to make friends. I needed to survive. I knew how to get to a new place, learn what I had to do, and just like manage life. And so that was one of the big topics I did in the diversity statement. Of course, my upbringing, being the daughter of migrant farm workers that made, very little money and had, a second grade education, was in there as well. But I think the main thing was ensuring that I wasn't repeating myself what was in the personal statement, because I didn't want anyone in that panel to say, you're saying the exact same thing, so you just wasted all this space. And always coming back to why is that unique experience something that they want on their campus? Because we all have difficult stories. Some of us has very sad and tragic stories, and we've persevered. But I think that if you think of these applications as to why will the school pick me and invest in me, remember that when they give you a seat, you have a seat at the table and you're taking someone else's seat. So when you decide to drop out because it got too hard and you're not reaching out, you're not asking for help, you're not sticking it out when it's hard, there's another person that didn't get that seat that you chose. And so I always approached it with, what can I bring with these experiences, and kind of encompass that in the statements following the guidelines that Emmanuel provided.
Yeah, I echo both Emmanuel and Cecilia. I think that the point of like making sure that you're not repeating yourself, particularly what you wrote in your personal statement and what you for what you decide to write on your diversity statement, it's just very, very important. Not all schools require a diversity statement, but to me, at least, it was recommended that if the school has it as an option, that I should definitely do it, because it's definitely just an extra opportunity that you have to talk to the admissions panel and make a case for yourself. And I think that when to the schools in which I submitted a diversity statement, I focused definitely more on my side of like my story as an immigrant and what I learned or how I basically, well, yeah, the lessons that I learned by being definitely like, low income and arriving when I was 16 years old, not speaking a word of English, living with grandparents and not with parents and all of those different things. And I just decided to focus on the fact that that gave me a skill that just made me very adaptable to different situations, that I was able to like land on my feet. Like it didn't matter what was happening. I always knew how to advocate for myself and try to find the right thing that would work for me, and that I was going to bring the same kind of adaptability to law school, right? So it's about how something that you actually learn through those situations, like why are you definitely like different, and like Emmanuel said, it was like if even if you are a straight white male, that counts as like diversity. If you have something else that like puts you bumps you up a little bit, you have to think about the fact that like diversity does not only mean like a person of color. It has to be more holistic. When you think about like the entire class, there's definitely like guys and girls. There's like older students and younger students. There's like students who are parents, and there are people who are coming straight from college. There are people who have done like amazing stuff, were Olympians, and there's people who decided that this is going to be their second or third career. So all of that is diversity. So but just try to focus into like why there's something that makes it uniquely you, and talk about that and why that is an important thing that it needs to be represented in that class, in that room.
Thank you, everybody. I think those are really helpful tips, especially for people currently in the process of applying to law school. So with that being said, the following question has to do with another large component of like the law school process, which is the LSAT. So the question is, if you could give an inspiring law student one tip on preparing for the LSAT, what would it be?
Yeah, so my main tip would be just to be consistent. When I was studying, I studied 6 days a week for 4 hours a day. And I did that for about 4 months. I think I tried studying for the LSAT like the summer before, and I was just kind of like dibble dabbling in it, but like the LSAT's a very like rigorous exam, and you shouldn't like study for it passively. So I think when my score increased a lot when I like took it very seriously, and I just like allocated a certain amount of time, a certain amount during the week, and I was just very consistent in it. And then I would also just learn like the fundamentals of the exam. There's the logical reasoning, the logic games, and the reading comprehension. So I think if you just take the time to like fundamentally learn like what skills do I need to know to tackle this, then you can start taking full practice tests. And then when you take your practice test, like thoroughly review each question you got wrong. And as you do that, what really helped me was just keeping a notebook, and I just spoke out loud like my logic, like, okay, I think this is the answer because of XYZ reasons. And my logic is wrong because of XYZ reasons, or my logic is right because of these reasons, and just reinforcing that. And then furthermore, what I did is that with each test section, I basically just retook each section until I got 100% under the time constraint. And I just like rinsed and repeated until I got every question right in every section. And I think if you do that for like 3 to 4 months, 6 days a week, 4 hours a day, you should be in a good position. And also, don't study like a week before you take the real test. I think you can just psych yourself out and get very anxious. So maybe like giving yourself a break right before you take the test, I think was really helpful for me as well.
Yes, I think that making sure that you have time to study is essential. For me, I was actually working. I was doing government relations for a nonprofit, and I was traveling a lot for work in like several different states. So it was a little difficult for me to actually just stick to a schedule. But I decided to just like literally carry my books in me wherever I was going. And I will also stay after work. You know, I will just work 9 to 5, and then from like 5 to like 7 or 8, I would stay in the conference room and just like camp out and study. I would do practice exams as well. And I first tried to study on my own, and I was just not getting the results that I wanted. So then I actually decided to get one of the courses and attend some of the classes. It helped a little bit, kind of figuring out like the manner in which you are supposed to take this kind of exam. I should also say that like I have never taken a standardized test before until I took the LSAT. So for me, it was very, very new. And I think that's that's the reason why I had struggled at the beginning. The other thing is, I know that the courses are not that cheap. They do cost a pretty penny. And as a student, surviving on student loans is just sometimes a little, out of paying for that out of pocket. It's just a little excessive. But I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with the UCLA Law Fellows program. They have, it's a summer program where you actually apply to the program, and they have been meeting virtually, and they have a like another group in the Central Valley. It's called the UCLA Law Fellows program, the Central Valley Law Fellows program, and they basically will teach you a lot about law school and what it's like to go to law school. They have professors come and talk to you. They have other students come and talk to you, and at the end of the program, they will actually pay for you to take one of the courses. I think it's either Kaplan or Testmasters. And so I also did that. So I had 2 different courses. It also helped a lot. I do have to say, like, the LSAT is not like the end all be all of it. Yes, like a higher LSAT score definitely means you will go to, your chances of attending a higher ranked school increase, and your chances of getting more financial aid also increase. But there's really no correlation between like high LSAT score and how well you will do in law school. I know several of the students in my class who had scores way higher than me, who are now in academic probation. And, like I didn't do so high on the score, and I am currently in the top 10% of my class. So like, there's really no correlation between that and how well you will do in law school. It's just another hurdle that you have to like jump through. But, the financial aid package, if you have a higher LSAT score, is definitely nicer. And you do not want to graduate with a lot of debt. I mean, try to work hard so you actually don't get that much debt.
The only thing I would like to add is that I think obviously just even having the information about the law, about the LSAT is key. I shared with some of the board members before the meeting started that I thought graduating from Chico State with a 3.9 GPA meant I could roll into this exam, take it, and I was going to get this great score, because I didn't even know what the LSAT was. That is just how ignorant I was and how little information I had, and how little research I did. So I showed up and I took the test. And during the break, people started talking about what the LSAT was and how they had taken all these prep courses. And I just freaked out, and I had finished half of the portion of the exam. So of course I go back in and I'm just completely psyched out. Like, what have I done? I scored horribly. But then what I did is I actually got serious, did some research, and I found that a lot of these programs have scholarships. So you guys should do some research, because I got a scholarship for Blueprint. I really loved the course, but I think to the effect of kind of some of the things that Manuel said, I was working full-time as a paralegal when I was studying. So I was kind of half-assing it. I was tired from work. I was getting off at 5:30 and adding 4 hours to my schedule and working from 8 to 5:30 and studying from 6 to 10 required discipline that I wasn't really committed to. I fooled myself into thinking I was doing it, but I wasn't. So I kept taking exams and I just wasn't consistent. And I just started telling myself in my brain, oh my God, I'm never going to get into a good law school. I'm never going to get a good test result. I eventually got consistent. I actually got into Hastings through the the Legal Education Opportunity Program. I ended up choosing GGU because I ended up scoring not super high, but enough to get a full ride. But it took about 2 years because I was just working full time and I didn't have the luxury of anyone helping me with my rent. So I guess one of the advices is the LSAT is very important academically to get your foot in the door, to get as much financial aid as you can. And you have to be consistent, like Emmanuel said. What Emmanuel described is what I did for the bar exam, and I passed the first try. And I told myself in law school, Jesus Christ, I was so bad at the LSAT and I couldn't get it together that I may never pass the bar exam. And I passed the bar exam over people that have gone to Ivy Leagues and haven't passed the first try, right? So don't think that when you take this exam that it defines who you are. It was hard for me to work full time, be a Latina student with no money, taking a little class on a scholarship and really committing. But if I knew then what I know now, it would be, if it means you have to pull out a loan from your undergrad college and you quit your job and that whole summer you're super consistent like Emmanuel, do it, because it won't take you 2 years like me. It won't take you 2 years of like failing and having all these horrible scores on your record and then having to write an essay that explains like, look, this is what happened. This is how like uneducated I was. And I didn't even know this was going to be in my record. Every time you take the LSAT, it will reflect, it'll tell people reading your application what you scored. So then you have to kind of explain these tests away. So the takeaways are, there are scholarships, try to find programs like what Ezequiel described. UC Davis has a program called For People of Color. I went to UC Davis for a day of law school and they actually raffle a program. They read your personal statements. They talk more about the LSAT, but there's a lot of scholarships and a lot of people that are out there trying to help you as a Latino student get into law school. So there are ways to afford these programs and find a method, but consistency is key.
And just one more thing that I would like to add is that currently the schools will take your highest score if you have taken the LSAT more than once. So, you know, it actually does help if they can see that like your first score was lower and then your second one was higher. Because then you can explain that like, look, I actually, you know, I've learned my lesson, I applied myself, and now this is what I can do now. But, you know, just so you know.
Yeah, one last thing I wanted to add is that I personally don't recommend taking a prep course. I don't think they're very useful. I think if you just buy the Power Score books on Amazon, there's 3 of them, and just like open the book yourself and then just read everything, like get your highlighter, pencil, and just go line by line, do each practice question. I don't think it's necessary spending like $1,000+ on a test instructor, because like at the end of the day, like you know how to read, you can write, so like you can really teach yourself, and just do the practice problems and it explains it to you at the end. And if you really don't know how to answer a question, like there's a lot of YouTube videos as well, or maybe like reach out to upperclassmen to sort of explain the questions at like Berkeley. And then the other thing is that an admissions officer recommended not to take the LSAT more than twice. So I think the practice tests are very indicative of how you're going to perform on the real test. So if you're not performing where you would like to, then it might be worth your time and money, because the LSAT costs money to take, unless you get a free waiver, which I think they only give you 1 or 2 of them. It might be worth just taking it like ideally once real time and then take as many practice tests as you need beforehand. I think I took like 30 or 40 practice tests before I took the real test, and then I only took it once and that was it. So if you can avoid yourself like extra money, I would say only buy the books on Amazon, which is like $140 for all 3 of them instead of 1,000 something for a prep course, and try to take the test only once, no more than twice if you could help it. And then also, if you send me your email, I have a lot of like PDFs I can send as well.
Perfect. Thank you all for all that amazing information we got. So we are about roughly 8 minutes away from 8 p.m. in which I said we would transition over to our Q&A session, or the second phase of our Q&A session, where the audience was going to be able to have their questions they formulated as to each and every one of our panelists. So we're actually going to go ahead and make that transition as of right now. So Anthony, who is one of our board members, is going to take the lead in this. He's going to be asking the questions that have been sent to him as a private message from our audience members, along with any other questions that we had in our Google document that haven't been asked yet. So as of right now, I'll go ahead and turn off my mic, and I'll go ahead and Anthony take over.
Thank you, Eric, and thank you to our panelists. Y'all are amazing. These are just some questions from the audience that have been kind of circulating while all of you were speaking. So the first one is going to be, did you go straight to law school after completing your undergraduate career, or did you take a couple years off to gain experience? What were the benefits of each, and what would you have done anything differently? I'll put that in the chat. Basically, I know a lot of that was already kind of covered just through all of your responses earlier, but just kind of pushing this question out here. You can kind of just like pick apart the question as you would like and just answer whatever is relevant or whatever resonates with you. And anyone can go.
I graduated, I went to study abroad in Madrid, Spain for a year, my junior year. And it's actually when I decided I wanted to study law. I worked in an immigration law firm there, and I changed my entire career path. So I came back, I graduated. I still didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I started working. I actually emailed every lawyer in town. I sent my resume and I said, I just want to learn from you. I just want to know if I want to go to law school. Will you hire me? I don't care what you pay me. And I actually landed in the office of a gentleman who was a public defender, but in Butte County, you can do private work and then you do half part-time contract for the county. So long story short, I ended up being 21 years old, running his little law firm by myself. I spoke to all the clients, I did all the intake. I would go to the jail, I would translate, and I quickly realized I just really loved it, and it was giving me very practical, like real life experience. I really recommend getting some life experience before you go into law school. I don't think it's necessary. I think it's amazing if you want to go straight. But 1 year became 3 years. I think that's the caveat that I'll tell you. It becomes very nice to make a little money, buy a car, you start working, you start getting comfortable, and then it becomes very difficult to transition to a student life and say, I need to quit, goodbye, I'm kind of gonna transition. That was very hard for me. And I started questioning myself if I was gonna be capable. So it came with a long string of kind of concerns because all of a sudden I was gonna become a student again. So what I'll say is, for me, if I could repeat it all over again, I would 100% work those 3 years of my life, because the world experience that I brought with me to law school, I think just like my sense of maturity, I was very unique and different than my classmates. I have a lot of classmates who didn't really know what they wanted to do, and that's okay. You can get to law school not being sure. I knew 100% I wanted to be a public defender. I went to law school to be a public defender. Every internship was with public defender offices, and then I ended up in one of the best ones in the country. But I knew I wanted to do that. And if you are thinking about law school and you're maybe not 100% sure, I cannot recommend enough. If you don't want to take time off, don't do it, but intern somewhere. Really try to follow someone around and really figure out if you think this life is what you want. Maybe you won't have an answer 100%, but I think law school and the bar exam are so excruciating and difficult and so doable, but it takes a very special human being that is very committed and really wants this. So I think that to the extent that you can see what life will be like, I think it's just very powerful. And that's kind of my advice. And I would take time off if I had to do it all over again.
So I also took time between undergraduate and graduate school. I graduated from Berkeley in 2013. So after graduation, I actually did work for an immigration law firm in Berkeley. And I really liked the work that I was doing, but I had done a minor in public policy. I started political economy, and then I did a minor in public policy. And I was really interested in policy, so I really wanted to give that a try. So I left the law firm. I did a fellows program, the Coro Fellows Program in Public Affairs. They dropped the public affairs part, they're based here in San Francisco. It's a rotational program it's 1 year post-college, where they actually place you to work in many different sectors like politics, government, nonprofits, and labor unions, and just private businesses. And it was a very good opportunity for me to actually see how things work and how like basically collaborate between the different sectors actually leads to like better innovation and you know all that. Um, Out of that program, I landed a job as the government relations and policy associate for a national nonprofit that focuses on fighting predatory lending practices. They're based in North Carolina with offices in DC and in California. And I was part of the state team working on different state policy proposals on the Western states. So from Oregon, Washington, Arizona, Colorado, New Mexico, Oklahoma, even though it's not a Western state, and one more, I can remember. Yeah, Hawaii. So I literally had to like just go and work all the time in all of these different places. I love the job. I really like doing policy. But one of the things that led me to law school was that often I was the only non-attorney at the table. And it never really bothered me, but a lot of people, and this is just kind of like something in society in general, there's this thing called credentializing. So if you don't have the credentials, all of a sudden what you say is not as valuable as what another person says. So oftentimes it didn't matter how much data I had with me, how you know, all the talking points that I had, like I actually had evidence of like similar laws being passed in other states and how they were working and all these different things. And it was like, oh yeah, but like, you know, they are, you know, so they always had like excuses as to like why that will not never work. But the other thing that I noticed is that a lot of the people that I was meeting with, either other organizations or within the government, they had, you know, they were attorneys and they had worked in private sector and they had worked in the public sector. So I noticed that the skills they had acquired were transferable to many different areas. And I started thinking, I was like, well, maybe that's something that I would like to do. While I was at Berkeley, I was part of the Latino Law Society. And that's when I had actually discarded law school as a potential kind of like graduate degree. And it was because I really had, you know, this idea that you only had to be, you know, like in court, that was like what an attorney did. And obviously it was like a very narrow thinking. And it was through my work that I realized like, oh my God, there's a lot that you can do with a law degree. And once I actually got to law school, I realized that it's even way, 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 way more than I thought that, so I arrived at Hastings thinking that I wanted to do the government concentration because I really wanted to continue doing that kind of work. And, one semester into it, I found TAPS and I really liked it. And I realized that now that's what I want to do. But having that time for me was essential because I learned so much about myself. I learned about how I work best. I learned about, everything that I can bring to the, there's this another type of thinking that you have if you have, some work experience before going to law school. I had told my employer that I was probably going to give them about 2 years. I ended up staying there for 4. So that is definitely, what Cecilia said, like, just be careful if that's what you want to do, if you want to have some work experience, that you really give yourself a timeline as to like how much time you're going to be outside before you go back in, because otherwise the change is going to be a little difficult. But yeah, I do recommend doing some kind of work before going.
Yeah, I'm also going to take 2 gap years to be a teacher because I want to do education law. And I think to that, I think internships or like law experiences are good, like if you want to be a paralegal or something. But I think more than anything, being like getting professional experience in the field you want to impact in that profession, I think is more important than the law, only because the law is like extremely abstract and like you'll be taught that in law school. So like a lot of my friends who want to go to law school are like paralegals and stuff, which I think is like nice, but I wanted to avoid that altogether because I'm going to go to law school anyways. So by virtue of being a teacher, like I'll be able to see like, okay, this is what the impact of education law is. So if you can sort of get yourself on the impact end of things, then everything else will come together, sort of like a bottoms up approach versus like top down, I think is really useful. But I also second the notion of getting professional experience before you go to law school. Because I also don't think that like as an undergrad, you don't really know anything. So like go learn something, and then maybe you can contribute to the classroom.
Thank you, all three of you, for answering that question very amazingly. And thank you for putting that in the chat. So we do have a few more questions. This is going to be, how did you ensure your application stood out from others? And what did you focus on? Oh, sorry, what did you focus your personal statement on? And I'll put that in the chat. That is for anyone who kind of remembers their application. If it's like not as fresh memory, don't worry about it. But just again, like with these questions, pick apart what you want to answer and just feel free to like take that with that and whatever resonates and just answer as you would like.
Yeah, so I think for me, I made sure that like every component of my application could only possibly reflect me. And by that, I mean like each recommender that I asked for a letter of recommendation, I asked them if they could speak to certain attributes of myself, or like if I took their class or did a program with them. Like my personal statement was just that. It was extremely personal. Like there's absolutely no one else in this world who could have replicated that. Or my diversity statement or my list of activities. I think I was just extremely intentional in each word that I eventually put down. And I think what also stood out was just like my conviction for education law. I think a lot of people say they want to do things, and they don't really have any information to back it up. So in my case, I said I wanted to do education law. And some of the things that I like sort of said to like prove it is that I worked with the Ministry of Education when I was in France. I've like done a lot of work in Mexico. I've like just did a lot of things with my school district. So it was like I said what I wanted to do, and then I kind of proved how I went about doing it in very unique ways, because I speak French and I was really interested in international relations. So I kind of intersected that when I worked with the French Ministry of Education, which I think was impactful. And then furthermore, I sort of spoke as to why I don't want to do anything else except the law, meaning that like I explained how like I did corporate finance, and I worked at a hedge fund and nonprofits, and I was just like, look, I tried out all these other things and I still want to go to law school. I think it just really demonstrated that I was like committed to getting a law degree. And then I think I also demonstrated the sort of work I wanted to do once I had my law degree. So I think something I asked myself was like, okay, if I had my law degree tomorrow and I could practice law tomorrow, what would be my immediate next step? And for me, that was like bringing a class action lawsuit to the Department of Education. So I think I just kind of like talked about that as well. And I think just like being very rooted as to my reasons as to why I wanted to be a lawyer, I think helped me stand out.
That was a beautiful answer. I echo a lot of that, but I think some of the things I want to highlight are, I think what Emmanuel said is spot on. It's, if you say you want to be a lawyer and you say you want to go to law school and you say you want to do a particular field, well, why do you want to do that, right? So for me, I was able to say, look, I want to be a public defender, and I've worked for a public defender for 3 years. I ran his office. I go to the jail. I translate. I actually find homes and rehab centers for my clients. I have seen what happens to marginalized poor communities when an officer decides to stop you because your registration is expired and then someone is dead suddenly or someone is beaten brutally. And I have seen these things, and I know that as this little paralegal, I can never stand up with the client and say, let me go to the courtroom with you. I remember begging my boss, this person called and now they're going to get evicted because they've been in there for a week, and they asked me if we can call so-and-so and if you can go to the courthouse and if you can file so-and-so. And my boss was just like, Cecilia, stop. I have way too many clients. Like, and I realized I need to get a law degree. So I put the work forward to show this committee, this is why I'm so serious. And this is why I have the qualities. I grew up in this kind of household. I grew up in a in a community that was poor. My parents went to school to the 2nd grade. I know what education can do. I know how your life can change, and I know what the law can do. And if I practice law, I know that my community will be better for it. And my personal statement was full of that. It was so intentional. I actually read my personal statement when I graduated, and then when I found out I passed the bar. And every time I read it, I still actually get the chills and I actually cry, because that personal statement is a work of art. It actually tells you everything about who I am as a human in 2 pages. And it has to be so intentional for it to be that perfect. I had 3 different mentors that read it and that perfected it. And then I ended up working with just one of my professors who had a PhD in English literature. She's actually the dean now at Chico State. And we sat at a coffee shop. I can't tell you how many times she questioned certain things. This doesn't make sense, but why does this make you feel this way? Everything ended up being just so perfect that I think it told that committee, this girl is serious and this girl means business. And if she comes to our school, she's going to graduate and she's going to be an asset to this community. So we can't really let her go. And that's what you want your personal statement to tell any school that rates who you are.
Yeah, I mean, Cecilia is like 100% right on this. I think that, the personal statement has the word personal in it for a reason. It has to be personal to you, right? So I know a lot of people say like, oh, you need to say this and this and this in your personal statement and make sure you include this sort of thing, right? Like, but if that does not reflect who you are, then that's not a personal statement. And the committee can read through that because they can see, the letters of recommendation, they can see the scores, they can see your transcripts, they can see, your resume. And if it doesn't match, what you wrote in there to what you have shown that you have done or that you want to do, there is a disconnect. And they can see that like, oh my God, this person probably just has no idea what to do with their life. So they're just giving law school a try, right? Because you will find some of those people in school, right? Who are like, yeah, my parents wanted me to like go back to school and I didn't know what. So, right, so I'm here, right? But like, you have to make your personal statement personal. So for my personal statement, I grabbed something that my mother used to say. She used to say, querer es poder, right? So every time that I could not do something or I will be frustrated with something, she'll be like, ay, mijo, querer es poder, mira, siéntate, like you can do this, blah, blah, right? So I took that and I actually wrote my entire personal statement on that. I can also tell, like Cecilia said, who's like, no one else has a personal statement like mine because it was personal. So I took that, I developed into like how that became a motto through my entire life. Through high school, learning the language and working while going to school in the Central Valley, right? Like how it was difficult, but querer es poder. I wanted to graduate high school, so I did it, right? How basically through community college, I was undocumented, it was pre-DACA, so I literally had to pay for everything, out of pocket. So it was just like, querer es poder. Like I have to work to pay for 1 or 2 classes per semester. So I wrote about that. And then I wrote about like, gaining status through asylum and going to Berkeley and how it was all new and all different to me. But hey, guess what? Querer es poder. I got here so far, I gotta do this. So I wrote about that through my entire like educational career and how I was now ready for law school as that next step. So again, just make it personal, make it about you. Don't make it about someone else. Don't make it about like your heroes. Make it about you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. So follow-up question that is kind of similar to that. It was boosted in the chat, I believe by Socorro, and I think the question, let me find it. What type of question did you ask yourself in order to answer the diversity statement? And I'll put that in the chat. I know that's very linked, and I know we kind of briefly touched on that during the first kind of portion of this like whole event. So if you want, you can just kind of like answer that as liberally as you can, but just a question in the chat and I'll put it here.
Yeah, I answered 3 basic questions, which is why me, why now, and wait, why 4 questions. The 4th one might not matter. Why me, why now, why law school, and why Harvard? I think those are the 4 questions that an admissions officer said we need to reflect on. Why me? Meaning like, what skills do I bring? What perspective can I bring? What experiences can I contribute? Why now? Like, why are you applying to law school now? Why not in 2 years? Why not in 3 years? Or like, why not later? Why law school? Like, why do you want to be a lawyer versus get an MBA or a PhD or not at all, or get a master's or something? And then why Harvard, I think, was just one of the questions for HLS. It was like, okay, out of all the universities, what makes you want to go to this school? And for that, I basically just looked at like the law clinics, some of the professors I wanted to take classes with, the general like intellectual environment, the larger university, things of that sort.
So my diversity statement, I think I already touched a little bit on this. I focused it on my journey as an immigrant, which, very different from like, my journey as an getting an education. And I wrote about like how that different perspective that I was bringing to the table had made me more resourceful, had made me more, basically a person that like learned how to advocate for oneself and for others, as well as, the adaptability and the resiliency that I was bringing. I didn't do that many diversity statements. I think I only did it for like 2 schools. I really wanted to just focus more on my personal statement than on the diversity statement. And so it was more for me. It was never like the main thing that I focused on, but.
Cool. And if there are any remaining answers to that question, we can kind of give space to that. But if not, we can just move on to the next question. Everyone's okay with that? Cool. Okay. So this one's a little more prophetic. So this is a little deep, but so one of the questions asks, what would you argue makes a good candidate for law school? And I know we also kind of briefly touched on that, but I guess that gets kind of into the territory of like what makes a candidate kind of distinguishable, or I would just say like what makes a candidate just more like, I guess, ready for law school in that sense, ready for like not only law school, but to work in law, and like what kind of that field kind of provides. So, and I'll put that in the chat as well.
I'm happy to begin. I think that a good candidate for law school and someone that wants to live this life is someone that is very clear on the fact that it is going to test you. It is going to be very, very hard. And you have to accept that you could be at the very top of your class in Berkeley and Harvard. I don't care what school, but law school is going to humble you and it's going to get very hard. And a good candidate is someone that is not going to be too proud to go knock on a professor's door and say, I have no idea what is going on. My first semester of civil procedure, I had an exam where my professor, you use these anonymous numbers, so he had no idea who I was. And he wrote on my exam, I think you are very confused about the law. Can you imagine what I felt when I read that? And I cried, but I had done so well in every other class and I didn't flunk because there's a curve and I still did so much better than everybody else. But my comment wrote this snarky comment, right? So here I am, Cecilia Fernandez, no one can do something I can do. And I said, oh, you watch what's gonna happen next semester because this class is 1 year long. Well, the next semester, I got the 8+ and what's considered the Witkin in law school. So it's the top grade in the entire class. And I actually became the teaching assistant of civil procedure. And then I became the teaching assistant for a bunch of other classes, including property law, which is a very difficult topic in law school. And I was teaching law students. The girl that really struggled with the LSAT, the girl that went to like 30 schools, the girl that, came from Salinas and the strawberry fields and had no idea that people took these fancy courses. So what makes a good candidate? Someone that if you fail, you're not going to say, this isn't for me. I don't belong. I'm not going to ask for help. All these kids are so much smarter than me. And that you create excuses in your mind as to why you're not succeeding and they are. You are just as capable, and it's going to be very difficult. And I don't think that there is anything in this world that can prep you for it. There is a certain energy about a lot of these law schools, unless it's an Ivy League or something like that, where there's a honors or high honor system. Some of these schools, what they do is that they publish your grades. So I don't know if Hastings does that, but at my school, it was kind of crazy. They would post grades and like your actual names, and you would know who was at the top of the class and who wasn't. But that was Golden Gate, because it isn't super high ranked, and it was very kind of cutthroat sometimes. And you had to just ground yourself and say, I'm not here to make enemies. I'm here to find good friends, to make a impact in this world, to ask for help. And I'm not better than anyone, and no one is better than me, and I'm going to succeed, and I'm going to pass law school, and I'm going to pass the bar exam. But it is going to be challenging. There were many nights where I would finish an exam and I would call my fiance, and poor guy, I just started like screaming and crying because now it was his fault that I thought I had failed an exam. So it is just going to test you left and right. So a good candidate is someone that is going to be just ready for the ride, and you're just going to figure out how to kind of roll with the punches and figure out life as just the 3 years roll by, because you are very capable.
Yeah, I mean, again, Cecilia was just like perfect for, had a perfect answer for this. I think that a person, a good candidate for law school would be someone who has an open mind and is eager to learn. Because if you arrive thinking that you already know like a lot about you, or like this is, like the right way to study, or this is, how you read, or this is, like I already know about the law because I work at a law firm, or I was a paralegal, or anything like that, like law school is going to grab you and spit you out very easily and very quickly, right? I think that you will be challenged in a way that you have never been challenged before, and you have to really learn and remind yourself, why are you there? Because if you're not there for the right reasons, it's not going to be worth your time. Like the type of work that you will be doing, like the amount of work that you will be doing, and like Cecilia said, was like professors will write on your exam sometimes like, this is the wrong application of the law, or this is like the wrong case to use for this, or something like that, right? So, but similar to Cecilia, civil procedure was a nightmare for me my first semester. I'm one of those people that like, I think very like black or white, like it's either this or is that, right? And I thought that I was going to like civil procedure because it's about the laws that basically govern how suits are, moved through the court system. And it turns out that everything was a gray area. And I don't really do well when things are like, well, it depends, which you will learn that's like the law school answer for anything, like, well, it depends. So I basically, after taking a midterm exam, which you don't really have that many midterms, but the professor decided to give us like a writing assignment where we had to basically, like, he gave us a fact pattern, and we had to, like, based on the law, give an outcome or a likely outcome. And I totally bumped that, right? So I decided, like, this is not what I want. So I worked very hard on that class. I ended up getting an A on the class. Again, the professor did ask me to be a TA for his class next semester. Writing was also one of those classes that was just very difficult in law school. And if I had I studied political economy, so like all my exams were essays. So I thought, like, oh, I know how to do this. Like, this is easy. Like, I've done this for so many years, right? But again, it's a different type of writing. It's so different. You have to be so succinct, so like specific, that my first memo came back with so much red ink on the paper that I really wanted to just like rip it into shreds and like not look at it again. But I had to take that feedback, like swallow my pride and be like, okay, obviously I don't know what I'm doing. Let me talk to the professor and figure out exactly where I am missing why am I missing the things that they want me to learn? Why am I not getting them? And it was through like going there with an open mind and saying like, hey, maybe I don't know everything. Maybe this is right. Maybe like I'm here to learn and they know what they're doing. So let me just absorb and do what they tell me to do, how they tell me to do it. And it just made a difference. I think that I was also a TA for the writing class. So for me, that was just like a big thing because as an immigrant coming, like not speaking the language and going through so many ESL classes to now be the TA in a writing class and having to tell the other students, like, this is how you do this, avoid this, do this, watch out for this, was just like, and I was not the highest grade, I did not get the highest grade in the writing class, but the professor saw how much I actually worked for that, for my grade. And she saw that like I had like this eagerness to actually learn, to actually apply what I was learning. And I think that's what set me apart from my other classmates. And she came to me the following semester. She was like, I want you to be my TA for the next class. So yeah, just come in with that open mind and be adaptable and you will do well.
Yeah, lastly, I just want to add that I was told good lawyers or good law students are good thinkers, good writers, and good citizens. And I'll just add, like, to be empathetic. Like, I assume you guys can read and write. I'm sure you'll do fine. I just think, like, if you can be empathetic towards the power of the law, I think that makes a phenomenal lawyer. We need more empathetic lawyers.
Wow, thank you for the answer to those questions, all of you. So there's, I guess, a brief, quick question for the very last question we have, since we're cutting short. Show of hands, did any of you take the GRE over the LSAT? Or did all of you take the LSAT?
Just the LSAT, yeah.
LSAT.
I took the LSAT as well. I think there's some benefit to taking the GRE if you want to do like a joint like graduate degree alongside law school, but I was recommended by almost everyone to take the LSAT just because it's accepted by every law school versus a GRE. I think only some of them are accepting it.
Awesome. Okay, thank you. And that was just a brief question someone had. But last question we're going to ask. This one is a little deeper and prophetic, and I promise, like, way deeper. But all right, let me post it in the chat. We only have a little time left. Okay. All right, so the question is going to be, what does the future of law school and or the field of law look like to you?
I'm happy to begin. I've seen articles where I don't know how true it is that President Obama, I still call him president, has kind of made comments about how law school should be 2 years and then you do like a practical the third year and you're just like working. I'll tell you that I would love to see the path of law school one where you learn the theory, you do all of your classes, but as a newer attorney, I've been practicing law for 2 years, I see new attorneys coming in, and I think that law school can be such a grind that it can be so difficult to get practical experience. And I don't know if 3 years is necessary completely. I think that not only do you need world experience to get into law school and succeed and have all the, because of everything that we've discussed, but just in general, I think a holistic thing of learn the theory and learn the empathy through like work and have some knowledge of how to be a good attorney once you begin, because we're all going to practice different things. But I'll tell you that the kind of law that I practice, I am unofficially a social worker and a mental health professional. I have clients in court that are in custody, wearing a suit and handcuffed with chains from their feet and their hands, and they are mentally ill sometimes, they're schizophrenic, they're not on their medication, and they have no one in this world, and they only have me. And I will get so many phone calls from the jail, and they want to speak with me and they want to talk to me because there's no one else. And why do I mention that? Because I would like to see a road of the law to also show attorneys how to be empathetic towards human beings, because change can happen if you have a realistic approach and a genuine desire to make people and your community better in some sense. I love my job because I genuinely wake up in the morning excited to go to court. It's been 2 years, and I am not exaggerating that there is nothing else in this world that I would do. And I genuinely believe that I was born with the purpose of becoming a public defender. And that's such a bold statement, but I really think that like I was chosen, and it was like, this girl is going to be a public defender, and this is the kind of person that we need to do this job. And not because I think I'm special and amazing, but because I genuinely just carry so much empathy in my heart for my clients. And I wish that law schools taught you more of that, that in any law that you practice as lawyers, we meet people in their very worst days of their life. If you do family law, some of them have just lost their children. If, you know, whatever it is, I mean, I can't even think of a tax law example, but I know Ezequiel may have some. You know, I think you can think of so many scenarios. And I think just empathy, more practical experience, more world knowledge, more acceptance of just everyone, the law being inclusive. I work in San Jose at the Public Defender's Office, and it's still difficult to find attorneys that speak Spanish and that look like our clients. That's something that I hope the law brings more, that we have more Latinos, that we have more people that speak Spanish that look like our clients, that they feel comfortable when we're sitting at that council table representing them.
Yeah, I think that first of all, yes, law school should actually be 2 years, not 3. But I think that the future of like the law field in general, I do think that like a lot of things are going to get automated. I think that now, for example, like before, when you will do the research, you will actually go to the library and pull all these case books and try to find a case. Now everything's online. Like I literally would just log into Westlaw, enter a few search words, and I can find all these types of cases that I will be useful for my brief or whatever I'm arguing, right? But I think that what is essential is that kind of like in emotional IQ, like that you will need to actually interact with your clients and with others. For example, you know, the example with pets, I participated in the low income taxpayer clinic last semester, and you know, there's a lot of that is already automated. You know, all the filings, you know, everything, like there's even a program where you enter all this information and it will tell you the likelihood of whether the IRS or not will grant, you know, the particular relief that you're asking for your client, right? Like, so I don't even have to like think too much about it, right? But the skills of actually being in touch with the client to actually learn how to listen, picking on those cues as to like what is important to them, why they're finding these, why did they do the thing that they did, right? So as an example, one of my clients was this woman who, you know, is low income, super low income. I think her income had been like $18,000 for the year, right? With 3 children. And all of her tax credits had been disallowed. So the IRS was telling her like, you actually owes this money back, like, you know, like because they had just released it for like the year before and everything. And it was because of like, you know, very specific things as to like what the IRS considers like, you know, meeting this qualification or not meeting the qualification, right? But every time I would talk to the woman, even if I was giving her like bad news, you know, she was very grateful for the work that I was doing for her. Right? She will tell me all these sort of things, like after, you know, going through like everything that I had to tell her, she then will tell me about her day and her kids and this and that and all of that. And that was because, you know, I learned how to listen, and I learned to actually give them, you know, the attention that they deserved, what they wanted. And for other students, right, like they just had hard time actually getting in contact with their clients because they were just like, well, you didn't give me the paper, so, you must not be taking this seriously. But, with me, like, I will be talking like, oh, well, like, there's many reasons as to like why you could not get me the papers, that I needed, all these different things. But again, it was about listening to them, making sure that like you actually were present and you were actually understanding, as to their circumstances and the reasons why they had, done or not done something. And I think that is like, what will be the center of like practicing law in the future. If you can connect with your clients, you will not have clients. So
with that, we are a little over the time limit. It is 8:33. So at this moment, we want to quickly ask any of our panelists who feel comfortable with sharing the contact information to please go ahead and put it in the chat. This is simply because some of the questions that our audience submitted weren't able to be asked just because we were sync with the time. So this is so they can reach out to you, ask their questions privately with positive to all three of you, and hopefully get a response regarding that question. At the same time, I just want to quickly re-announce that please remember that our board application to become a board member for the fall 2021 to spring 2022 semester are now open. So please go ahead and consider applying. The flyer that has all details necessary is on our Instagram page with the link provided. So please keep a look on that. And the last thing I do want to ask for everyone if we can do it. So since this is our first event, we of course need to, like any other event, want to take a group screenshot, group photo, however we want to call it here on Zoom, for the purposes of posting it on our Instagram page, of course, because like I said, this is our first ever event. We of course want to show off. So for anyone who wants to participate, please go ahead and turn on your cameras. Don't be shy. This is for us. We're all here as a family. So just turn on your cameras, do whatever you got to do. You don't need to put on makeup. You don't need to change clothes. Just show your face and that's fine. It works fine. It's just for the purposes of posting it on our Instagram page. So Alex who is one of our board members. She's going to take the lead. She's going to count us down and she'll be taking the screenshots. Like I said, go ahead and get ready, turn on your cameras, and Alex will count us down once she'll be taking the screenshot.
Okay, I'm gonna say 1, 2, 3. Oh, and that will be our countdown. So 1, 2, 3. Very nice. And then actually, can some other board member, just in case for some reason mine didn't capture everyone, can you guys also take a 1, 2, 3 picture with everybody? Okay, cool. Hopefully someone's counting down.
I'll go ahead and count down for this picture. So I'll go ahead. So again, 1, 2, 3. There we go. Perfect. So that takes care of that. So now with that, we can go ahead and conclude our first ever event for Latinos in Law here at UC Berkeley. Thank you all so much for coming tonight. It really means a lot, especially given that we're 2 weeks away from finals. So with that, me despido. Good luck, everyone, for your finals, especially. And thank you. And big shout out to our panelists. Thank you so much for being our panelists for our first ever event. We really do appreciate it. Thank you all so much. And we hope we remain in contact. Hopefully we can all invite you to another event in the fall in person. Who knows, but we're sure to keep in contact. So thank you all and good night.
Hi, everyone.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Okay, let's go. Oh, I need to show you guys the culprit, the one that was barking. Let me see if
Cute.
You are
Cecilia,
literally such.
how cute.
I had to bring her to the office so I wouldn't leave her alone. So in our